Madame Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. I think I saw a lot of you for my icebreaker speech, which is also online, incidentally. But for those of you who weren't there, I went over my whole reason for joining Toastmasters. And there were kind of two main reasons. One was just that I was new to Leduc and needed to meet some new people. And the other reason was I was in private practice as a dietitian and looking for ways to kind of strengthen my sales skills. So those were my main reasons, but now I have some updates for you. As we have talked about in previous meetings, just in conversation, or also when Spencer did his panel discussion, if you were there for that, he talked a bit about the spending crisis or how the economy is going right now, and a lot of people don't have very much expendable income. So that is affecting all of us, and then also my endeavors to try and get a private practice started up because for a lot of people, they have to pay out of pocket if they want to see a private dietitian. Otherwise, the main way they would see someone is through the public healthcare system. So I was trying to make it go the private practice stuff, but in the 3 months that I was doing it, I had only about three clients. So as you can imagine, I did not make very much money from that, which spurred me on to look for some other opportunities. So I was applying for lots of jobs there for a while, and I was thinking about my previous work experience and dietitian work that I really enjoyed doing. And while I was in Ontario in Mississauga, I worked for a primary care network. And I really enjoyed that work because I really don't like being in the hospital setting. A lot of the patients there in the hospital setting are very sick. There's not a whole lot you can do for them. They might be on a tube feed, or if they're not on a tube feed, then you're trying to convince them to eat in between tests and procedures, and they're feeling really crummy. So I prefer that community setting, and I feel like you can make a lot more difference in that setting because you're working with people on how they're going to eat in their everyday life, whereas in the hospital, that's such a small snapshot of time. So when I was looking for what job to apply for, I was ideally looking for something in a primary care network. And it just so happened that in June, I saw two postings in the Calgary area. So one was in South Calgary, and that's where the Chaparell comes in. The PCN is located in that neighborhood of Calgary. And then the other PCN was the headquarters are in Okotoks. So I applied to both of these, and for anyone who has been on the job hunt, I know a couple of people in this group are on the job hunt. You know how frustrating it can be. Yeah, sometimes you apply for a job and you hear nothing back. Sometimes you do interviews and then they don't end up giving you an offer. So, to be honest, I wasn't super optimistic, but I thought I'll just apply anyways and see what happens. And then the Chaparral PCN got back to me first. So I did like the introductory interview. They seemed to like me. I hadn't heard from the Okotoks one, but I thought you win some, you lose some. That's okay. And then the Chaparral PCN asked me to come in person. So I thought, okay, things are going pretty good with this one. Maybe they'll make me an offer. And then it just happened to work out that around the time I went in person, I got a call from the Okotoks PCN. So I was like, wow, I thought I would get 0 out of 2. Maybe I'll get 2 out of 2. And so they arranged an interview with me in Okotoks. I wasn't quite sure at that time which job I was going to accept. And to be honest, when Kimberly messaged me on the weekend, I still had not decided. But there were a few things that I had to consider with the two jobs. So the one in Chaparell, it's at this big, I don't know what you would call it, like very team-based PCN where there's like five dietitians just on the dietitian side of things, and then many other practitioners there. And my commute would be very short, maybe about 15 minutes to get there. The the major downside of that job position though was that it was just to cover a mat leave, which is very common in my line of work. It's like I don't know the actual statistics, but it's got to be over 90% women. And that's usually the way that you break in is you do a few mat leaves and then it ends up leading to a permanent opportunity down the road. And then with the Okotoks job, there would be more commuting. I'm going to be a bit in Okotoks, a bit in High River. So there was that I had to kind of take into consideration the longer commute times. But the major upside is that it was a permanent position. I would say the analogy there is like if you're a teacher, how it can be pretty tough getting a permanent position. It's kind of like that for dietitians as well. So initially, when I thought that the Okotoks job wasn't going to get back to me, I thought, well, the South Calgary one, the one in Chaparral, is a slam dunk. I'll just go with that one. And but then there was twists and turns along the way. So it took a bit of time for Chaparral to get back to me because the manager went on vacation. So I wasn't sure if they were going to give me the offer. So I decided I'm going to go through with the Okotoks interview and just see what happens there. But it was kind of funny though, because I drove there with my boyfriend since it was going to be like a 3 hour drive. We kind of split up the drive. And I said to him, I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be that we're there for the interview in Okotoks, and that's when I'm going to get the offer from Chaparral. And that actually is what happened. So, like, I had the interview in Okotoks at 1 p.m. Then I came out, I looked at my phone, and I had a voicemail from Chaparral saying, hey, we would like to offer you the job. So at that point, I decided, okay, I'll take the chaparral job. Or, that's the job that I got offered. And I didn't know if the Okotoks location was going to offer it to me. So I was like, okay, I'll go with that. And the the Okotoks interview was actually just the first interview I had to do. They wanted me to do a second one after that. So I thought it could be a toss up. I'm not sure if I'm going to get an offer. But the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I was like, well, maybe if I can get an opportunity to get a permanent job, I should take it. It just kind of seemed like the signs were pointing that way. Like, for example, I met with a friend of mine from school who also happened to move over from Ontario to Alberta. And she was talking about how she was going from mat leave coverage to mat leave coverage. And I was just like, oh man, I might want to get away from that and find something permanent for myself. And so I made a little plan, kind of had like a conversation with the universe or God or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have certain criteria if I'm meant to take the Okotoks job. And if those criteria are met, then I'm going to take it. So the first criteria was they're going to offer me the job in the first place. Then the second one was that at the interview, they said, either we're going to do 4 days a week for this job or five. And, who's going to move to another city if you can't get a full-time job? So I thought, okay, that's the second criteria if they can make it full-time. And then I had my salary range in mind too. And then, wouldn't you know, this Monday, I got a call from Okotoks and they said, we want to offer you the job. It's going to be full-time. And this is the salary we're offering. And so all of those criteria were met. And I thought, okay, if there's any sign that I need, then this has got to be it. So I ended up accepting the Okotoks job. So I'm going to be working with the Calgary Rural PCN and serving that area, which is really exciting. And it's going to be a smaller team, but in some ways it could be kind of nice because I'm going to actually be the only dietitian there. They haven't had a dietitian serving that area so far, so I'm going to get to break some ground, see lots of different types of patients, So I'm feeling pretty excited for that. And then from there, we'll see what happens. I'm not quite sure at this point if I'll continue with Toastmasters. I kind of have to see like how demanding the position is. I might join in online or see if I can find a chapter in Calgary. But mainly, what I wanted to say at this meeting is I just really appreciate the fellowship that I've had with everybody in this Toastmasters chapter. And I hope that we will still stay in touch or that I'll see everybody around sometime. Thank you, and back to you, Madam Toastmaster.